Muy bien.
All right, awesome. I want to welcome everyone to the live Q&A session with the Next Generation Guatemala and the Mayan Wisdom Project. As we at NGG celebrate 10 years of community building, we're excited to partner with the Mayan Wisdom Project, an organization that's dedicated many years to connecting with the hearts of the Maya communities the elders come from. Together, we're intentionally holding a space today for all those who identify with being an adoptee from Guatemala and Mesoamerica, where we can come together and celebrate our diverse backgrounds and origins. After being separated from our birth families, it can be difficult to find ways to connect again in ways that feel authentic and don't reflect the modern trend of spirituality. Today, we'll be getting some answers to the questions submitted by the NGG community about reconnection, cultural knowledge, and what it looks like to be a Maya person. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Rebecca. I'm one of the moderators for the NGG Facebook group. I was adopted from Guatemala in 1999. I'm very excited to be able to host this conversation as cultural reconnection has been one of our most highly requested topics and is very near and dear to me. Joining us today is Solveig Berrios of the Mayan Wisdom Project, who will be translating for Tata Jerico, who is also joining us. He's a member of the Quiche Nation, an indigenous group of Guatemala, and has been honored by his community with the title of Aj Kakaw, guardian of the wisdom of cacao. And Solveig?
All right, welcome everyone. It's nice to see you all. My name is, as Rebecca introduced me, my name is Solveig Barrios, and I am the co-founder of the Mayan Wisdom Project, which is a really beautiful project that has existed for a few years now, where our mission is to create a bridge between the Maya world and the rest of the world, so that when people learn about ancient indigenous practices, specifically the ones of the Maya tradition, that they can have a safe space where they can access authentic teachers of the Maya mission. As Rebecca said, today we have one of those teachers as a guest with us. His name is Tata Jerico. His originary name is Bukukatsakik, and he has a lot of beautiful things to share with us. I just want to say that we're very grateful to have this collaboration with Next Generation Guatemala today. For us, this is going to be, I think, a very special event, and I hope you guys enjoy it. For now, Tata Jerico is going to do a little bit of an introduction before we get started to the Mayan Geocosmovision. And then we will get to answering some of the questions that you guys had sent. So I'll just give him the word. From now on, I'll just be translating. Le doy entonces, Tata, la palabra para que se presente y ya podemos empezar.
Muy buenas tardes a todas las personas que están a través de este enlace, pues conectados. Bienvenidos. Estamos en el territorio de los murciélagos tzotziles en Sololá, Guatemala. Mi nombre es Jerico Jonathan Gutiérrez Sosa. Soy maya quiché. Y para mí, pues, el día en esta tarde es motivo de alegría poder compartir con hermanos y hermanas que nacieron. Aquí fueron fecundados, pero por algún motivo de una historia particular tuvieron que viajar, están en otro lugar, pero desde acá un saludo cordial, un saludo de hermanos, de hermanas, desde el pueblo quiché, para todas aquellas personas que por alguna u otra razón han dejado esta tierra, pero desde aquí un saludo muy especial, muy buenas tardes a todos y a todas.
Good afternoon to all of the people who are joining us today in this event. I'm located today in the Quiche Nation of Guatemala. We're in the land of, we call it the Bats, the Tzotziles. I'm located in Sololá, Guatemala. My name is Jerico Jonathan Gutierrez Sosa. I'm originary of the Quiche Nation. And it is an honor and a pleasure for me to be here with you today, especially since I'm sharing with people who come from my land. Perhaps you were all born in Guatemala, and even though you went away, this is still your land, and it's a pleasure to be able to talk a little bit about that with you on this day. This event is very special to me, and welcome.
Para mí, pues, es un motivo muy grande el día de hoy compartir con ustedes 2 o 3 palabritas acerca de una historia que de alguna manera ha sido negada, ha sido oculta, ha sido menospreciada, Lastimosamente, cuando hablamos de historia, siempre vamos a tener a la mano documentos, una serie de documentales, información, pero siempre de la parte de afuera, ¿verdad? Ellos son los que han contado la historia del mundo maya, la historia del país que ahora conocemos como Guatemala. Entonces, lo que a mí corresponde, pues, es compartirles un poco esa historia, pero desde una perspectiva descolonizada. Es nuestra versión de la historia, del origen, de dónde somos, por qué nos hacemos llamar seres mayab y por qué aquí, a este territorio tan vasto, tan frondoso, lleno de vida, se le conoce actualmente como Guatemala.
So as I said, it is a pleasure for me to be here with you on this very special, to have the opportunity to share with you a little bit more about the Maya tradition and about the Maya history. I want to start by introducing you to who the Mayans are and a little bit about our history. But before I get started with that, I do want to make a remark, and it is that perhaps you have already tried to study some of that history. And unfortunately, the history that I'm going to share with you today is a history that has been denied, a history that we have guarded, but that has been a little bit hidden, and that because our history has been told by outsiders who came to study us, but a lot of our history has been told in a completely incorrect way. And part of our work today as Maya spiritual leaders and people who work in the Maya community is to reclaim that history, the history of the Maya world, as well as the history of the country that nowadays we know as Guatemala. But for me, the most important thing is that as I share that history with you, I can share the decolonized version of that history, the perspective or our version of the history of where we are from, of who we are, of why we call ourselves Mayab beings, and how this land that's now known as Guatemala came to be.
Así es. Por herencia cultural, abuelitos y abuelitas nos han dejado sabios consejos, dice el Pop Book en sus últimas palabras, en sus últimas páginas. Ellos recomiendan que nosotros no tenemos que olvidar de dónde somos, de dónde venimos, ¿verdad? Porque eso va a ser la base de nuestro caminar en esta vida. Por lo tanto, con el permiso de los abuelos, las abuelitas, vamos a compartir la palabra que a nosotros se nos fue heredado por generaciones. De la misma manera, pues los abuelos y abuelas mayab, ¿verdad? Acostumbraban también pedirle permiso al entorno donde convivimos. Los abuelitos sabían reconocer pues que la existencia de todo tipo de animal que existe alrededor de nosotros también son seres vivos que de alguna manera sienten y por lo tanto también se les pide permiso a ellos, se les pide permiso a la flora, a la fauna, porque vamos a intercambiar 2, 3 palabras. Y la manera muy sencilla, muy práctica que lo hacían los abuelos para de alguna manera demostrar que son seres humanos, pues era prendiendo una velita, ¿verdad? Entonces ese es un ejercicio que trae muchos, pero muchos miles de años de historia, una forma bien humana, bien humilde, bien sencilla de reconocer que somos seres que integramos toda esta gran familia a la cual nosotros reconocemos como Madre Tierra. Entonces, si de repente ahí en donde estén tienen una velita, sería muy prudente pues poder prenderla para que la palabra pues pueda fluir y pueda llegar a donde tenga que llegar, siempre con el permiso debido de los mayores, de los abuelos y abuelitas. Gracias.
So part of our cultural heritage are the teachings of our ancestors, and one of the most beautiful teachings is You can find it in the last few pages of the Popol Vuh, which is a sacred book. It's the sacred book of the Maya Quiche people, a very famous ancient codex. And so in the last pages of the book, our ancestors give us one last piece of advice that they leave us with. And that piece of advice is to always remember them and to always remember where we come from, to always remember where we come from, because that is what makes us who we are, and that's also what guides the path in our lives. And so everything that they share with us is very rooted on remembering our ancestry and where we come from, and that's located in the last few pages of the Popol Vuh. For us, everything that we're going to share with you today has been inherited to us because our tradition has been passed on orally from generation to generation. And of course, to come to a virtual space such as this to be able to share, we had to ask permission from our elders. And every one of the words that we're going to share with you are the recommendations that they gave to me of what I should be sharing with you on this day. And that's how I'm going to do it. But a big part of our tradition is not only to ask permission from our elders, but also to ask permission from the space that surrounds us, of the big family that we call Mother Earth. And so we also ask permission if we're sitting in a space. And by the way, he's sitting in an ancient Maya altar right now, just so you know. And so he says that we have to ask permission also from the energies that are around, from Mother Earth, from the animals, from all of the ecosystem that's around. And one of the most ancient practices of our Geocosmovision is to do it through fire. So as you saw in this moment, he stood up for a moment to light a candle, and he says that there's a way larger history of the importance of fire in our tradition. But basically it would be if by any chance any of you brought a candle or a few candles with you, this would be a really good moment to light those candles, because fire nurtures our connection with the energies of existence, and it also warms us up and warms up our energy and our heart so that we can have a better connection through conversations such as the one we're going to have right now. So if you brought a candle, feel free to light it in this moment. And that's also what he did, so that before we begin with the conversation, he has already asked permission from the energies of existence.
Muy bien, entonces lo que voy a compartir con ustedes, nosotros le decimos brevario cultural. Muy difícil se logra conseguir en documentos, libros o algo así, porque es una forma de vivir muy tradicional aquí en los pueblos donde nosotros vivimos. De donde yo soy, le llaman pues el altiplano guatemalteco. Estamos aproximadamente como a 2,300 metros sobre la altitud del mar. Y aquí pues en estas tierras altas floreció una de las civilizaciones más impresionantes que ha dado la madre tierra, la civilización de la náhuatl. En ella pues convergieron un montón de pueblos, y entre ellos el pueblo o el ser mayab. Y como bien lo decían los abuelitos, pues el pasado, lastimosamente ahora se entiende el pasado como algo que ya no existe, algo que quedó y desapareció, porque incluso así dicen, los mayas desaparecieron. Pero los abuelos, en su conocimiento, ellos sabían perfectamente de que el pasado simplemente son nuestras raíces, dicen ellos. Es de donde procedemos. Por lo tanto, es muy importante entender nuestro pasado, conocer nuestro pasado, nuestras raíces, de dónde surgimos, de dónde venimos. Entonces, para el pueblo mayab, el pasado no es algo que ya no exista, al contrario, el pasado es de donde nosotros tomamos fuerza para caminar hacia el futuro.
So as I share the history with you, I'm going to do it in a very traditional way, which is the way in which we tell our history, something that's not so common in the modern day times. But I will begin by putting up the setting and telling you in which location I am currently sitting in. I'm currently located in the Guatemalan highlands. So it's like above 2,000 meters above the sea level. So it's the Guatemalan highlands are these ranges of mountains, but the lands are very flat. And this is where the Mayans have inhabited for a really long time now. And in ancient times, there were people who came here who we know as the Nahuatl, and from them, several nations were formed. They were like the original one, and several nations were formed, including us who identify ourselves as the Maya beings. So this is like a very, very ancient piece of history, but I wanted to start by talking a little bit about that, because as our ancestors and as our grandfathers and grandmothers have always taught us, a lot of people will tell you that the past no longer exists or that the past no longer matters. But in the Maya nations, we actually believe it to be completely the opposite. The past is one of the most important things, and it matters the most in a sense, because we're like plants. And the past or our history, our roots are where we come from. And a plant will be strong depending on how strong its roots are. And so to have a connection with your history, with your ancestry, and with your past is very important, because when you understand your roots, you grow up to be a stronger plant. And so our elders and grandfathers and grandmothers always teach us to learn about our past. So I'm starting by talking about the past, very old past.
En quiché nosotros le decimos al ombligo el mushuk, y el ombligo pues tiene una conexión muy profunda con el pasado, porque los abuelos dicen de que hay un hilo que conduce nuestra vida, y ese hilo es el hilo conductor de nuestra existencia. Se refieren al cordón donde se alimenta el bebé cuando se forma en el vientre de su mamá, ¿verdad? Ese hilo es quien conecta nuestro pasado con nuestro presente y nuestro posible futuro. Entonces ese hilo nunca hay que perderlo. Hay momentos, obviamente, que en la vida nos cortan, así como cuando se recibe a un bebé, nos cortan ese hilo conductor. Por eso acá cuando nace un bebé, el ombligo pues es algo muy preciado y se guarda, ¿verdad? Eso no se tira, no se menosprecia, porque es lo que une, ¿verdad? Nuestro pasado con nuestro presente. Entonces es una forma de entender que los abuelos pues tenían un pleno conocimiento sobre el aspecto histórico de su origen. Y como les digo, pues es la historia, al final de cuentas, es nuestra plataforma, es de donde nosotros estamos sostenidos. Entonces, el hilo conductor de la vida, pues es el mushush, el ombligo. Y ese ombligo, como decían los abuelos, aquí todavía hay una tradición que dicen que uno donde dejó el ombligo, uno tiene que regresar, uno tiene que retornar nuevamente. Esa es una creencia muy antigua que aquí se refleja, pues, porque cuando uno deja su comunidad por mucho tiempo, por X o Y razón, por circunstancias muy naturales, pues retornan y vienen a pasar sus últimos días pues acá, y como por pura coincidencia, pues como que el ombligo vuelve a jalarse, y cuando uno se aleja, por decirlo así, lo vuelve a juntar a uno de alguna manera. Entonces es muy importante, vuelvo a decirlo, la historia, la base, nuestras raíces.
Bueno, antes de traducir cómo era en quiché, mushuksh. Ahí está. Sorry, Mayan word that I just learned right now. So there's a word in Quiché language, which is mushuksh. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So, and it translates to belly button. And when we look at the history of the Maya, we will see that they have, for millennia given a massive importance to the belly button. The belly button, or like our physical belly button, is a very important point of the body, and it represents a very profound connection specifically to what we're talking about, to the past. There is a teaching from our ancestors that says that there is a thread that conducts us throughout our life. It is the thread that provides us with existence. And this thread would be what we know as the umbilical cord. And as we are in our mother's womb, it is the umbilical cord that gives us all the nourishment, it gives us all the life. But the umbilical cord and the belly button are very important for the Mayans, because it physically, it does provide us with life as we're in our mother's womb. But not just that, it is said that it is the thing that connects us to our past, the thing that connects us to their ancestry, and it is also the thing that keeps us alive to be able to connect us with our possible present and our possible future. And so in the Maya nations, when a baby is born, they, because a doctor will usually just, cut your belly button, not your belly button, cut your umbilical cord the moment you are born. But the Mayans do this in a very specific way, and they don't just put the umbilical cord in the trash, but they actually keep it. And there's a set of rituals that is done so that people can keep their connection to their umbilical cord as they're babies. So there's even a saying that they say in his communities, and it is, where you left your umbilical cord is where you have to go back to, like is where you have to travel back. Like if you want to find yourself, travel to where your umbilical cord was left, and that's where you will find yourself. And the elders always say your umbilical cord always keeps you coming back to where you're originally from, because you have this, like, spiritually, this connection to the umbilical cord. He says that, you go further and further, physically speaking, you can go further and further away from it, and the further away you go from where your umbilical cord is, the more you'll feel like homesick, or the more you'll feel like something is missing. And so they say to find yourself, you have to go back to where your umbilical cord is at. So the Mayans have a whole spiritual practice that's connected to the belly button, and it goes back to understanding a little bit of the importance of your ancestry being connected to your past and to your roots, or where you come from.
Muy bien, entonces eso es para que se entienda un poquito lo que voy a comentarles ahorita. Actualmente en el mundo conocen a la cultura maya, le dicen, o la civilización maya, pero es erróneo llamarle una civilización, porque la civilización, como dije a un principio, en general, la que compartió el territorio desde todo lo que conocemos como México Central, todo la península de Yucatán, lo que conocemos como Guatemala, Belice, El Salvador, Honduras, todo ese territorio llamado Mesoamérica, ahí fue donde florece el pueblo mayab. Pero dentro de este gran pueblo, pues hay diversos pueblos. Entonces el ser mayab se entiende como un grado de conocimiento, una forma de entendimiento, al igual que los mexicas, al igual que los toltecas. No es que fueran civilizaciones, sino que eran grados de sabiduría, ¿verdad? Entonces el ser mayab es un estado de conocimiento, es un estado de sabiduría, y de ese magnífico pueblo nosotros procedemos. Entonces, ¿quiénes eran los mayas? Actualmente mucha gente, muchos arqueólogos, antropólogos, la ciencia occidental manifiesta pues de que el ser mayabo, el pueblo maya, se ha extinto, cuando realmente nosotros estamos vivos. Aún se conserva en su esencia total. A Guatemala ahora lo conocen en el mundo del sector de turismo, lo conocen como el Museo Vivo. Cuando uno viene a Guatemala, viene a experimentar con 23 pueblos auténticos, originales, que aún preservan su idioma, sus costumbres, tradiciones, ciencia, en todo el esplendor. O sea, el pueblo mayab, el ser mayab, hoy en día está vivo, más que nunca. Lastimosamente, pues, la historia nos ha enseñado, como les dije a un principio, es la historia oficial, la historia supuestamente de los vencedores, pero lo que nosotros compartimos, pues, es nuestra propia historia, desde nuestra vivencia, desde nuestras comunidades, desde lo que nos han contado los abuelos y abuelitas, ¿verdad?
In the world nowadays, people recognize the Mayans by calling the Mayan culture, and they oftentimes call us as civilization. And in a way to call the Mayans a civilization, the Mayan civilization would be a little bit incorrect, because in this sense in which we call them a civilization, what we are referring to is the several nations who live in all of Mesoamerica. Reminder, Mesoamerica is the south of Mexico, like part of Mexico, all of Guatemala, all of Belize, and parts of Honduras and El Salvador, small parts of Honduras and El Salvador. So it's like the whole region. And this region, the Mesoamerican region, is where the Maya people originated. This is where the Maya people originated. But I have to remind you that when you are referring to the Mayans, like, what do you, like, who are the Mayans? Because in truth, so many different nations come from the Mayans. Like we said, Tata Jerico is from the Quiche nation, but there's also like a Chiquel nation, the Sotujil nation, the Mam nation, and I can keep going for a long time. There's a lot of different Maya nations. Each one of their nations has its unique language. It has unique different things that, like pieces of attire. Their attire is different from nation to nation, and there's differences. But there is one thing that they have in common, and is all of these different nations come from the big nation, which is the Maya nation. So it would not be correct to call it a civilization, because it's not just one people who live in this piece of land, but it's so many different nations who live in this piece of land, but they do originate from one nation, which is the Maya nation. So when we say the Maya nation, what do we mean by that then? So in ancient times, being called Maya was kind of representative of your level of knowledge and your level of wisdom. So Maya is more like Maya is the Mayan way to say Mayan, by the way, just so you guys know, with a B at the end, Maya. So B apostrophe at the end. So basically is the level of knowledge and the level of wisdom of people who come from a certain nation or in a certain region. The same goes for Tolteca, the same goes for Mexica. The Mexica split also into different nations, and Mexica just speaks for the level of knowledge and wisdom of those nations. So it's a little deeper than just to call it a civilization. And so it is the Maya nation is a magical nation from where we come from. Western anthropology, archaeology, and science has insisted in saying that we the Mayas are extinct. And this is completely incorrect. There's like this huge, massive misconception that says that the Mayans disappeared and that they're extinct and that they don't exist anymore. And he says that this is not true. We are still here. As a matter of fact, if you come to Guatemala, a famous name for Guatemala is the largest museum in the world, which is alive. So they call it like all of Guatemala is just like a living museum where you can see the history and traditions and culture of the people, but not the people from the past, because actually the Mayans have one incredible thing that they have achieved, and is that over thousands of years through the oral tradition, they have kept their tradition, their culture, their belief system, and their practices almost intact. For thousands of years, it has been passed on from generation to generation, exactly as is, without making any changes. It's truly incredible. And still, millions of people of the Maya nations of Guatemala still practice this tradition exactly as is, and it has been passed on to them exactly as it has been passed on for thousands of years. As a matter of fact, he says, we are more alive than ever. And if you come to Guatemala, you will find at least 23 authentic nations, which each have their own language, their own costumes, their own cultural traditions, their own science, and their own attire.
Muy bien. Los pueblos mayas a través de la historia siempre han sido menospreciados. Recordemos que desde la llegada de los españoles, para ellos a primera vista éramos unos salvajes. Poco tiempo después nos dieron el título de incivilizados. Después cambiaron de título y nos titularon que éramos ignorantes. Luego dijeron que éramos indios. Actualmente nos dicen indígenas, pero siempre ha sido con la única intención de menospreciar a los pueblos mayas. ¿Y por qué lo han hecho? Si nos damos cuenta, en la historia, ¿quién no conoce el maíz? En el mundo se conoce el maíz. Y aquí fue donde se domesticó el maíz. A través de muchos años de investigación, de procesos, de análisis, de contemplación, observación, de la praxis. Aquí los abuelos no acumulaban información leyendo libros, sino que ellos practicaban la ciencia. A esto, hace 7,000, 8,000 años se le conocía como teosimple, o sea, esta es la primera manifestación de lo que ahora conocemos como maíz. Así era el maíz hace 8,000 años. Para que lograse desarrollarse como esto, los antiguos mayas, abuelitos y abuelitas, con gran conocimiento, lograron esta creación y en base a esto se ha sustentado la gran civilización de la náhuatl. Gracias al sagrado maíz, lograron ellos construir miles y miles de estructuras piramidales que aún están por descubrirse. De la misma manera, el sagrado cacao es otro aporte que los pueblos mayas han dado al mundo entero. Actualmente en el mundo, ¿quién no conoce el chocolate? Y aquí tenemos vestigios ancestrales muy antiguos de que su origen procede del pueblo quiché. Entonces, también la matemática, los mal llamados calendarios, que para nosotros son ciclos de vida, el ciclo de la luna, el ciclo del sol, el ciclo de Venus, ¿verdad? Grandes astrónomos. Actualmente la NASA ha descontinuado el uso de los mal llamados calendarios mayas, pero se conoce pues de que sí, le dieron mucho uso, incluso los ascensos que hacían hacia la Luna y Marte, siempre eran bajo los registros de los acontecimientos, eclipses y todo eso que nuestros antiguos abuelos ya habían dejado hace miles de años. Por lo tanto, la civilización de la náhuatl y dentro de ellos los pueblos mayas, los seres mayas lograron un nivel formidable de desarrollo intelectual, ¿verdad? Gracias a que ellos realmente lograron entender lo que nosotros somos como seres humanos, ¿verdad? Muchas gracias.
So since the times of the invasion, around 500 years ago, we've been called many names. When in ancient records of the people who came from Europe, you can see that they referred to the people of these nations as savages, later as uncivilized. We've also been called ignorant. They wrongfully called us Indians as well. And just like that, we've been given many names that, you know, if you look into the history of all of these, you'll see that there's a totally incorrect basis for why they thought or they decided to call us this. But if you study the Maya cosmovision and tradition deeply, you will soon enough learn about the incredible amount of advanced things that we did in agriculture, in science, and in so many other, in medicine and spirituality, and in so many other different areas. For example, who in the world today doesn't know corn as a food? Like, who's not familiar with corn? Especially corn is the basis of so many foods that we have in our diet nowadays, right? But corn originated around, well, there, no, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I was translating that a little wrong. So 7,000 or 8,000 years ago, there was a plant that we know as Tenocintle, huh?
Teocintle.
Teocintle, okay, sorry, Teocintle. And he's holding it, and he was just holding it in the camera for you to see some moments ago as he was showing it. So Teocintle. That's the plant that where corn originates from. That's the original shape that corn had. So it looks totally different than how the corn that you see nowadays. For thousands of years, our nations, agriculturally speaking, played with this plant a lot until we got the corn cob that, or the plant of corn that nowadays we all know and use, and that the whole world knows and uses. What people don't know is how deep corn is. Like, the history of corn probably would require its own entire video course just to even get the first glimpse of the significance of corn for the Maya nation. But in essence, believe it or not, it is thanks to corn, guys, that we were able to build the thousands of pyramids, many of which are yet to discover in all over Mesoamerica. The history of the Maya being able to build all those pyramids is highly connected to the history of corn. I would love to go much deeper into that, but that would take several hours. But yes, it's just like incredible advances in architecture as well as in agriculture. Are for thousands of years are highly connected to the history of corn, which is so sacred and important for the Maya. Not just that, but we also, there are ancient records of us being able to use the cacao for thousands of years. And same thing, who doesn't know chocolate nowadays? But what we know today as chocolate has nothing to do with its origins and the incredible cacao, which if you learn its history, again, that would require an entire course just to even get a small glimpse into the history of cacao. It has been used in incredibly profound ways for through the Maya civilization, the Maya nations, and also not just the Maya nation, but to create incredible relationships with several other nations all over the continent. And so we created what now wrongfully has been called several calendars. We don't call them calendars, but cycles of life. We measured the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the earth, the cycles of Venus, several astronomical events. The mathematics of the Maya nation were so advanced that there are operations that they did for the creation and some of the measurement of some cycles and actual practical applications that even today have not been deciphered because of how mathematically complex these are. As a matter of fact, the Maya wrongfully called calendars are the most mathematically advanced calendars in the history of humanity. And even modern science, the science that we all know, has been able to advance in certain areas so deeply because they based themselves off of some of those operations and discoveries of the Nawa and the Maya nation. And so calling us savages, uncivilized, or ignorant would be incorrect.
Así es, entonces hay que sentirse muy, pero muy felices y en cierto grado pues orgullosos de nuestras raíces. Entonces, el teocintle, que es el maíz, y el teobroma, que es el cacao, cuando se fusionaron estos dos grados sagrados, se logró generar lo que nosotros somos ahora, según los abuelos y las abuelitas mayab. En ese plano, pues, hay que dejar en claro que los pueblos mayas han dado grandes aportes al mundo. Nos queda también con mucha satisfacción reconocer de que el conocimiento que lograron generar los antiguos abuelos y abuelitas fue un conocimiento biófilo, se le dice técnicamente. Y cuando hablamos del conocimiento biófilo, nos referimos al conocimiento que se encarga de cuidar, de aprender, de entender, conocer la vida, pero al mismo tiempo de conocerla, mejorarla, cuidarla, quererla, porque es lo que nos genera la vida. Entonces, ese conocimiento que se logró generar aquí tiene un gran ejemplo para otras civilizaciones del mundo. Mientras que en Occidente, los pueblos allá han intentado invadir otras naciones, otras tierras, apropiarse de riquezas de otros pueblos. Acá lo que ha hecho el pueblo o los pueblos mayas es dar de corazón para el mundo entero, no importa en qué rincón del mundo se encuentren. Por eso es de que en el maíz hay maíz amarillo, hay maíz blanco, hay maíz rojo, hay maíz negro. Ahí están representados los 4 grandes pueblos que componen lo que ahora conocemos como mundo. Lastimosamente, el pensamiento moderno nos ha metido una idea de que hay superiores y hay inferiores. Para nosotros todo es parejo. Y ese también es un gran aporte que ha dado el pueblo maya al mundo. Un ejemplo de cómo la humanidad entera puede vivir en equilibrio. Entonces, a la hora de que los abuelos fusionaron esto, imagínense el superalimento, la base, maíz y cacao, iba a poder generar un pueblo que no padecía hambre. Aquí eran personas físicamente hablando muy resistentes. Aquí no existía la gripe, no existía la tos, no habían enfermedades como las que ahora se ven en el mundo. ¿Por qué? Porque había una base sustentable. Y eso sí le podemos llamar desarrollo, porque era un conocimiento para todos. No era solo para los poderosos, no era solo para un grupo específico, sino que era un pensamiento en general, era un conocimiento comunitario. Y ese es el gran avance también que los pueblos mayas dan al mundo, un ejemplo de verdadero desarrollo. Solo se logra el desarrollo si todos, ahí sí que todos sin excepción, tienen lo necesario, lo básico que es el alimento. Y eso se logró solo acá en los pueblos mayas, ¿verdad? Con estas 2 grandes semillas. Por eso es de que los 2, incluso los nombres no se los pusimos nosotros, se los pusieron científicos de afuera. Teo simple, teo broma. Comida, ¿verdad? De dioses, de vida, de dioses. Y eso fue creado aquí y eso se dio para el mundo, ¿verdad? Entonces, hay que sentirse orgullosos de nuestras raíces. Hermanos, hermanas guatemaltecos que están en otros lados, hay que sentirse muy, muy orgullosos de dónde procedemos, ¿verdad? Gracias.
So the name of these 2 foods that are the basis of the Maya nations are teocintle and teobroma, which is theobromine or theobromine, which are kind of one of the bases for the Maya nations. When it comes to knowledge in our nations, is a little different than the knowledge that people of the Western cultures learn how to study and learn about. Instead of just reading it on books or learning the theory of things, we learn and practice science, we practice medicine, we practice spirituality. We, all of the things that we learn about, we learn them through practice. And our knowledge is very similar to the concept of biophilia, he says, because instead of just learning the theory of things, just the theory of them, we learn to learn about it through practice, to fall in love with the living aspects of reality and existence and science and medicine and culture and spirituality and all of those different aspects. And so while Western nations in ancient times acquired all of the things that they have by invading other nations and taking from them, native nations such as the Mayan nations, we have not taken from others, but we have given. And just like many nations of our continent, we studied, we learned through the concept of biophilia, and we have given and shared with other nations that knowledge and that information. We have shared with every single one of the individuals that form our societies and our communities, that nation, so that everybody since ancient times has had access to these nations. We have seen the importance of building societies in which everybody has all of the basic needs that they have, because the Mayan have always thought that that's one of the bases to build a thriving society, is to make sure that every single one of the individuals has everything, starting of course by food, the most basic need that human beings have. And if you learned about the agricultural systems of corn and cacao, you would understand that the Mayan, they did not just have the basic food covered, but as a matter of fact, their nutrition was covered in such ways that in modern day life, we could only imagine. He says, we created a race of really strong, healthy people, because truly, in ancient times, like the way in which we viewed well-being and health is just so much more advanced than how it is in the modern day world. And so very warriors, very strong people. And so not just that, but the Mayan nations built their entire communities and societies based on the well-being of all of the people who form part of those communities and still do form part of those communities. And that's very represented by corn, even, because for those of you who don't know, the Mayan say that humanity is made out of corn, and there's 4 colors of corn: black, red, yellow, and white, which are the 4 colors of the 4 great nations that create what we now know as humanity. So the 4 races of humanity. And so just like that, the Mayan not only advanced agriculturally, architecturally, scientifically, mathematically, spiritually, medicinally, and in every single way, also lived in harmony with nature for thousands of years and created incredible technological advancements that are so profound and incredible, but they also took care of their people and made sure that everybody in their nations had everything that they needed, as well as access to all of that incredible knowledge. So he says, if your origin is from Guatemala, you should be very proud of your ancestry, because you come from really an incredible several nations that form what we now know as the Maya. So I think now, creo que ahora vamos a pasar entonces a las preguntas.
Sí, ya iba a culminar, solo para, no sé si me da un minuto.
Perfecto. He's just going to close up by making a little conclusion, and then we'll move on to the Q&A.
Sí, yo sé que el tiempo ya nos apremia, y imagínense, solo estamos dando una breve introducción de nuestra versión de la historia, pero para que se entienda un poquito de lo que estamos hablando actualmente, le dicen Guatemala, pero ese nombre pues se lo pusieron los hermanos también anáhuac, pero específicamente los náhuatl. ¿verdad? Porque hay una cultura que se llama Pochteca, y ellos se dedicaban al comercio entre los pueblos de acá y los pueblos de México. Pero ellos cada vez que venían acá les decían que iban a venir a Guatemalan, ¿verdad? Lugar, ese nombre entonces por lo tanto corresponde al pueblo náhuatl, ¿verdad? Guatemalan quiere decir lugar de árboles grandes. Imagínense, aquí habían árboles de 500, de 1000 años de antigüedad que los abuelos cuidaban con mucho cariño, y todo eso pues se ha ido destruyendo, pero en sí el nombre Guatemala, como les digo, es de los hermanos nahuas, de los hermanos náhuatl. Ellos fueron quienes le denominaron así al país donde vivimos ahora. Antiguamente para nosotros se le conocía como Pachil Cayalá, que a la hora de traducirlo, pues quiere decir la montaña o las montañas donde están toda clase de frutas, toda clase de sabores, toda clase de colores, flores, fauna. Era un paraíso estos territorios, ¿verdad? Entonces, por eso es de que en Guatemala florece, incluso lo conocen a nivel mundial como el país de la eterna primavera, porque aquí en todo el año hay flores, hay frutas en cada estación. Entonces nuevamente es para que se sientan orgullosos de las raíces de donde nosotros hemos surgido. Muchas gracias. Entonces si podemos pasar a la siguiente parte. Disculpe, Zulvia, gracias.
No se preocupe. So he apologizes because he went a little longer than he was supposed to, and he says it's crazy because, to be honest with you, that was like an introduction to the introduction. Truly, it was not even like a real introduction, but it was like a pre-introduction to the topic because it's such an incredibly extensive and profound topic. But just to finalize, he wanted to share the origin of the name Guatemala. So actually the name Guatemala comes from the Nahuatl, as a matter of fact, because there were these people who were called the Pochtecas in ancient times. And the Pochtecas were in charge of commerce between the nations that are located where now Guatemala is, and the nations that are located where Mexico is. Pochtecas traveled between Mexico and Guatemala and did commerce. So they brought products from Guatemala back to Mexico and products from Mexico to Guatemala. And when the Pochtecas traveled to Guatemala, they always said, we're going to Guatemalan, which if you translate that word from Nahuatl, it means the place of the big trees. Because originally in ancient times, Guatemala had trees all over the country. There were trees that were 500 years old, 1,000 years old, like really old, big trees. Unfortunately, now you rarely see them because, we have really taken care of destroying our nature. But in ancient times, imagine what the Pochtecas would see as they entered Guatemala was like this incredibly massive trees. So Guatemala comes from Nahuatl, and that's how the Pochtecas used to call Guatemala, Guatemalan. But for us, in the Maya nations, so originarily, like in ancient times, we did not call our own region Guatemalan, we called it Pachil Cayala. When you translate Pachil Cayala, and this is the thing about words in Mayan languages, that there's not one word in Spanish or English which really fully covers the translation of what that word means. So truly, Pachil Cayala it refers to the place in which the mountains give you all kinds of fruits, all kinds of flavors, all kinds of colors, all kinds of flora and fauna. Pachil Cayala is referred to, when you look at the history of it, as this paradise in which you can find all the tastiest foods, the tastiest fruits and grains and seeds, the brightest colors and all of that. Even nowadays, this is not ancient, but all over the world, Guatemala is referred to as the country of eternal spring, because it's almost like as if it was spring all year round. And yeah, so that's just the conclusion. Another reason to be proud of your origins, he says, because it's a beautiful, beautiful country as well. So now we will actually move on to the Q&A section. I'll give you the word back, Rebecca.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As I said, I took a look at the chat. It looks like everything you're saying is really resonating with everyone viewing. So I wanted to say thank you. We got so many fantastic responses from the community from the sticker that we posted. And so we had to choose, but we chose the most requested topics for our questions today. I'll be asking each question, and then Solveig will be translating them. And then Tata Jerico will share his answers, and then she'll translate them back into English for us. So let's get started with our first question. How can I reconnect with my Guatemalan heritage and be grounded in who I am when that connection was severed by adoption?
Bueno, entonces Rebeca solamente estaba agradeciéndole a todo el mundo. Parece que ahí por YouTube, donde nos están viendo, la gente está muy contenta con todo lo que se está hablando. Y ahora pasamos al área de preguntas. Elegimos 5 preguntas porque hubieron muchas, pero elegimos las más repetitivas, pues porque no tenemos tiempo ilimitado, si no las responderíamos todas. Pero vamos a empezar con la primera pregunta. Y la primera pregunta es, ¿cómo me puedo reconectar con mis raíces guatemaltecas y centrarme en quién soy si mi conexión fue cortada por la adopción?
Muchas gracias por la pregunta. Bueno, pues yo creo que ustedes ya dieron el primer paso, y es que están buscando la esencia, están buscando la raíz, ¿verdad? Vuelvo a retomar el ejemplo del ombligo, ¿verdad? Ese hilo que se cortó tiene que unirse nuevamente. De lo contrario, ese ser, ese individuo, no va a estar completo, porque le hace falta su raíz. Entonces, este ejercicio que se está haciendo es lo que tienen que hacer ustedes, buscar, ¿verdad? Los abuelos y abuelitas, en su gran conocimiento, en su gran sabiduría, ellos nunca se quedaron con una duda, siempre preguntaron, siempre cuestionaron todo, ellos cuestionaban todo, pero siempre consultaban a los mayores. Entonces, aquí otra forma de encontrar, volver a reconectar por la situación que han pasado es buscar a los mayores, en este caso sus papás. Pregúntenles cómo fue el proceso, si hay información que se divulgue, ¿verdad? Porque es necesario, como les digo, volver a reconectar. Pero este ejercicio, esta pequeña charla que se está dando, es el inicio, ¿verdad? Es la forma de cómo nosotros volvemos a reconectar a nuestras raíces. Entonces yo les felicito porque ya lo están haciendo. Se lo están preguntando, pero lo están haciendo. Entonces eso también es de reconocerlo y animarles. No tengan ninguna pena en preguntar, en consultar, ¿verdad? Pregunten. Aquí hay mucha gente que puede darles respuestas, les puede orientar. Nosotros tenemos a nuestros mayores. Cuando tenemos duda, uno lo que hace es consultarlo con su mamá, con su papá. Si no están los padres, pues están los abuelos. Si no están los abuelos, están los tíos o un amigo, pero siempre es recomendable consultar con un adulto, ¿verdad? Para que él nos dé una orientación sana y obvia. Gracias.
We're just going to wait one moment. Looks like Solveig has some internet issues, so we're going to wait just a minute, and I think our other translator is going to step in, so we'll just wait for her.
I'm back. Okay, so I'm so sorry. My internet went away. I don't know what happened. But just in case it happens, by the way, there's a translator ready to jump in just in case it happens again. But unfortunately, I do have to ask Tata Jerico to repeat the answer to the question because I couldn't hear him. So I'm so sorry, guys. I'm in Guatemala, and sometimes internet connection is not amazing here. So that's why. Perdón, va a tener que repetir la respuesta, Tata, pero sí le escuché la primera partecita. Llegué hasta lo del ombligo. solo para que siga a partir de ahí.
Muy bien. Como les decía, pues el ombligo es lo que nos vuelve a conectar, es lo que nos tenía conectado desde un principio. Y el ejercicio que están haciendo ustedes es de aplaudirlo, es de valorarlo, porque están pensando cómo volver a reconectar, pero ya lo están haciendo, ¿verdad? Ya lo están haciendo con este ejercicio que estamos entablando. No tengan miedo en preguntar, en consultar, en averiguar un poquito sus raíces. Sus raíces tienen una historia, como ya les decía, pues muy grande, muy fuerte. Y ahí están los mayores, los abuelos y las abuelitas siempre a nosotros nos inculcaron. Cada vez que tenemos una duda, cada vez que estamos indecisos con algo, siempre los mayores son quienes tienen que orientarnos, ¿verdad? Entonces, si en algún momento tienen la oportunidad de consultarle a un adulto mayor, a un abuelito, una abuelita, háganlo. Ellos no nos van a decir algo que nos desoriente en lugar de orientarnos, ¿verdad? Entonces, siempre es recomendable hablar con los adultos, los ancianos. Y como les digo, no tengan miedo, no tengan vergüenza, no tengan temor de averiguar sus raíces, porque sus raíces son muy fuertes y muy profundas de un pueblo muy grande que le ha dado mucho al mundo. Gracias.
Okay, so well, again, sorry about the lack of connection, but it was just like a minute, so it's all good. So, well, he says that in this case, he wants to start to answer the question by saying that just the fact that you're here means you're already on the right track when it comes to finding that reconnection and being able to go back to the connection with your roots, because that's how you're supposed to start by learning, to start by asking. And he'll go a little bit back into the example he gave about the belly button and the umbilical cord. He said the only way to find about your roots is to go back to them, to go close to them, to start opening a door related to learning about them. And he says that one of the most beautiful teachings of his ancestors, of his grandmother, his grandfather, and all of the teachers who taught him about his tradition as well, is that they always give you one piece of advice, and is the elders, the grandmothers, the grandfathers, they always talk about the importance of always asking questions. The elderly of his community always say, the way they became wise is because they always asked questions. They always were curious. They always, when they didn't understand something, they did not just say, okay, well, I didn't fully get it, but that's it. Oh, well, but they always asked more and tell me more about that. And what else about that? What more can I learn? And so the Maya, since ancient times, have often passed on this teaching of, and ask me more, ask me, did you understand? Ask me. And so he says, you have to never be ashamed or shy or think that for some reason you should not ask questions, especially you guys who come from, as he just spoke about, such a thriving, incredible tradition. That's where your roots are, where your ancestry is, from such an incredibly thriving, amazing, great tradition and ancient tradition. And the people are there, they're available, and all you have to do is ask the questions and go back to, as he said, your umbilical cord, because that's where the answers lie. And so research, ask the elderly, and they're the ones who are going to give you a lot of answers, and just start a journey of learning, which he says, if you're here, you already did in a way. So that's really good.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Let's say we'll start with our second question as well. What is something you learned at a young age which still guides your beliefs and paths in life?
Dice que muchas gracias, que eso fue una respuesta muy bonita y que entonces pasamos a la siguiente pregunta. La siguiente pregunta es, ¿qué es algo que usted aprendió a una edad temprana por medio de su cultura que todavía guía sus creencias y caminos en la vida?
Sí, me estuve indagando yo mismo para responder eso y la verdad hay una clave. La clave es la palabra respeto. El respeto acá en las comunidades es algo que se practica en cada momento. Lastimosamente se ha ido perdiendo en un grado muy alto que ya no existe el respeto. Y para mí el respeto fue lo que me abrió las puertas, me quitó ese vendaje que yo tenía, porque cuando uno es respetuoso, ¿verdad? Todo en la vida va a fluir mejor. Les voy a poner unos ejemplos. Ejemplo, respeto hacia donde estamos viviendo, ¿verdad? Cuando uno es respetuoso, ya no ve al mundo como un simple lugar donde hay flora, hay fauna, hay animales y todo, ¿no? Cuando uno es respetuoso, ya lo ve como una madre que genera, que crea vida. Por lo tanto, para nosotros ya no es simplemente planeta Tierra, es la Pachamama, es la madre Tierra. Otro ejemplo, un poco más aquí en uno. Si nos damos cuenta, cuando amanece, los pajaritos cantan de alegría, empiezan a hacer sus sonidos, cada uno en su especie, pero lo hacen cuando aparecen los primeros rayos de sol. Ellos son seres muy agradecidos, saben cuando aparece el Padre que genera la vida, para nosotros es el sol. Ellos saben que sin la presencia de esos rayos de sol, ninguna especie de vida va a vivir. Entonces ellos cada vez que ven el sol, cantan, se expresan y le dan gracias, ¿verdad? Porque aparece nuevamente el Sagrado Padre Sol. Para nosotros ese es un gran ejemplo. Por eso es de que los animalitos son los verdaderos maestros. Entonces, si los animalitos saben agradecer los rayos de sol, que al final de cuentas son los que generan la vida también, porque son los que posibilitan de que haya una serie de efectos naturales, por ejemplo, el teocintle cuando se manifiesta y transforma las plantas y un montón de fenómenos que suceden ahí. Entonces nosotros cuando somos seres agradecidos y cada vez que amanece nos hincamos o de cualquier manifestación, pero sabemos reconocer de que esos rayos de luz de sol son los que van a generar nuevamente un día más de vida. Cuando nosotros agradecemos, todo fluye mejor. Otro ejemplo de cómo ser agradecidos, cuando incluso aquí los abuelos, cuando les iba mal, tenían algún problema, una enfermedad, les fue mal en el estudio, algo perdieron, les salió mal un trabajo, ¿verdad? Uno se molesta, uno se pone irritante y en lugar de agradecer, uno es mal agradecido y hasta puede maldecir. Los abuelos no eran así. Los abuelos en momentos difíciles es cuando más agradecían, porque ellos decían pues de que uno tiene que sufrir para aprender. Entonces el conocimiento, al final de cuentas, la sabiduría era sufrida, era vivida. Y cuando uno es agradecido incluso por el dolor, uno se vuelve un ser sublime. Uno logra generar, por decirlo así, transformar eso malo, eso negativo, en algo positivo. Entonces, para mí ese fue la clave, ser un ser agradecido con todo. No importa el lugar, no importa la situación, no importa la condición, agradecer, porque de esa forma en que somos agradecidos, vamos a entender. Entonces, les comparto esto muy particular. Yo siento que el respeto, ¿verdad? El respeto es lo que nos va a abrir caminos. El respeto es el que nos va a quitar esas vendas que a veces no nos dejan ver lo que realmente es la vida. Respeto y agradecimiento. Ser seres agradecidos por todo lo que se nos dé o incluso por todo lo que se nos quita. Muchas gracias.
So when I first heard this question a few days ago, I really had to think about it for a long time because I didn't know, like, out of the different things that I've learned, perhaps what's the one that maybe marked my path the most. But after thinking about it for some time, I realized that there must be, the one answer I came up with must be the most important answer of all, personally for me. And it is the most important thing I learned from growing up in the Maya nations is the meaning of respect and the importance of the practice of respect. For the Maya, respect is something that happens in every moment of life. Since the time we are very little children, we are taught the great, massive, and incredible importance of respect. And unfortunately, little by little, that's something that even in our nation sometimes has gotten a little lost, and throughout the whole world, definitely it has gotten very, very lost. But we hope that one day people can go back to it. So when I say respect, what do I mean? I came up with a few examples for you to understand me a little bit better. So the first example is that one has to be respectful for the place where one lives. We, in modern day society, have become perhaps so unconscious of what surrounds us. We are so immersed in our mind or in ourselves sometimes that we totally forget about what's actually around us and the significance, importance, or the meaning of what's around us. So we might walk around Mother Earth without even thinking about the fact that we're walking around Mother Earth, when in reality, if you study the symbiosis of nature, if you see everything that goes into nature being able to function in the way that it does, you remember, why do you think we call her Mother Earth? Because she's the giver of life. Take away a few of the things in nature and you are dead. You know, like you can't take away the water, take away the food, take away certain things, and we're all gone. It's literally the one thing that provides us with life. Mother Earth, some call it Pachamama. She's according to our nations, she's completely alive. She has a spirit. She is life, right? And so when you learn the practice of daily respect towards the earth, as you walk around the earth, you begin to see her differently. You don't see her as like this thing I don't even think about, but you start to truly have such reverence for her, such gratefulness for her. And you're most certainly going to think twice before destroying her or doing things that are harmful for her if you actually have a connection with her. But this connection is activated through the practice of being respectful, of actually stopping and not just being immersed in yourself, but actually taking a look around at the life that exists around you and not just your own. The other example is, for the Maya, we always say that the animals are the biggest teachers of all. They came before us, and so we call them our big brothers, our big siblings, our older siblings. And so every morning at sunrise, if you've been up, you've heard all the birds start to sing during the sunrise. They scream, they go crazy for the sun that comes out. And you might have never given that such deep thought, but if you think about it every morning, for all of existence of the earth, since there have been birds every single day for sunrise, as soon as the first rays of sunlight hit, all the birds wake up and they start singing, right? And for us, you know, just like he said, if something bad would happen to the earth, something bad would happen to us, because we would die literally, because we cannot exist without the water, without the wind, without anything. We cannot exist either without the sun. but we take it so much for granted, the existence of the sun, of the sunlight. If you take the sunlight away very quickly, everything, then not only us, but everything dies on the earth. The earth would die if the sun wouldn't be here. And he says, even the birds are grateful. So every single morning, when the sun rises, the birds get so happy about it, and they sing and they express the gratefulness to the sun, so to the Father, Son. So why can we not also then be grateful every time the sun rises? Because that means there's life. That's a sign that there is life. As long as the sun rises, there is life. And so that is another example that they always have given us since we're very little, about the birds, of the reasons why you should be grateful for the rising of the sun every single morning, and the existence of the sun, right? So just like that, well, with the sun, we wouldn't exist, that the simple wouldn't exist, like the corn, the food, the animals, nothing would grow, and we would all die. So that's why we should be grateful and respectful towards it as well. So the animals truly are the true teachers of us. But not just that, our grandfathers or grandmothers in our nation, they have always taught us about the importance of the way in which you handle the difficult situations of your life. So maybe your health's not so okay, you had a conflict with somebody, or you're not doing good at school, or you're having some trouble at work, or you're having whatever, different forms of trouble. He said, in the Western cultures, we've noticed that's when people curse the most and get the angriest and are like so angry at life and everything. But in our nations, we've been taught that our grandfathers and grandmothers, since we're kids, we've always seen them, that when things get the hardest, that's when they're the most grateful. And when they give the most offerings for the energies that provide our existence, that's when they say thank you the most. Because since we're little kids, they have taught us that sometimes in life we have to suffer so that we can learn. And every bit of suffering that we are brought in our life can be turned into a learning that makes us grow. And for the Mayans, everything in existence is duality. There's light and darkness. And so in the darkness, you also learn, you know? And so they always teach you that you should never deny the darkness and curse at it, but instead it's in the darkness that you have to be the most conscious, the most mindful, the most grateful and respectful towards the things that are being shown to you, so that you can also work on them. And so the Mayans say that knowledge and wisdom don't come only through easy, nice, beautiful things. They also come through the difficult, challenging, like dark things that also happen in life. And so it is in those dark things when you have to give the most gratefulness. And the teaching of being respectful towards pain and grateful towards pain makes human beings become sublime beings that are in awe of existence and much more aware, who can also learn quicker and be more conscious of why the things that are happening to them happen to them. So the Maya, since the time that you're a little kid, they teach you that you have to be grateful. The gratefulness is one of the biggest teachings, and that you have to be respectful. And he thinks that out of all the things that have been determining for him in his life that he has learned, perhaps respect and gratefulness are the biggest two.
That's very deep. I love that answer. Let's look at question 3. What are some responsibilities and challenges you have faced that we as adoptees may not have had to?
Dice que le encantó esa respuesta, que es muy profunda. Así que muchas gracias. Pues la siguiente pregunta es, ¿cuáles son algunas de las responsabilidades y retos que usted enfrentó por ser de donde es, que tal vez nosotros los adoptados no hemos tenido que enfrentar?
Sí, la verdad, muy De la misma manera, las preguntas que están haciendo son muy profundas. Yo veo una responsabilidad muy grande. Los abuelos y abuelitas mayas dicen que cuando uno adquiere un conocimiento, un entendimiento, un grado de sabiduría.
Perdón, Tata. Yo no sé qué pasó, pero su micrófono de repente se escucha un poquito extraño.
Creo que es la señal, no sé si me escucha bien ahora.
Se escucha un poco robótico.
Sí, ha de ser la señal porque están pasando muchas nubes. Me voy a acercar un poquito para...
A ver si eso va. Gracias.
Ahora.
Si no, sigue ahí yo le escucho, yo le entiendo.
Muy bien. Con respecto a eso de las responsabilidades, hay una en particular, y es que los abuelitos y abuelitas mayas dicen que cuando uno, un ser humano, hombre o mujer, adquiere un conocimiento, un entendimiento, o un grado de sabiduría, solo va a ser sabiduría si se comparte. Pero si a mí me dan un conocimiento y lo atesoro para mí y no lo comparto, no es conocimiento, porque yo me voy con ese conocimiento, me muero y me lo llevo. Entonces esa responsabilidad sería transmitir lo que en nuestra vida logramos entender, en nuestro proceso de aprendizaje, en nuestro proceso de autoconocimiento. Cuando logremos entender algo, ese algo, entonces existe la necesidad de transmitirlo. Hay que pasar. De lo contrario, nos quedamos con eso y las generaciones que vienen van a crecer sin ese entendimiento. Entonces, los abuelitos siempre fueron bien meticulosos con esto. Siempre exigen de que el entendimiento que uno vaya a lograr tiene que pasarse, tiene que transmitirse. Entonces, para mí, esta pregunta se refleja, como le digo, en ese compromiso sería transmitir lo que logramos entender en su momento. Si no lo hacemos, ¿verdad? No hacemos nuestra responsabilidad, nuestro trabajo, ¿verdad? Entonces, así como a nosotros nos ha costado entender, aclarar muchas cosas, el momento en que logramos aclarar todo, también tenemos que aclarar a las nuevas generaciones o a los que aún no han aclarado su mente, ¿verdad? Entonces, esa responsabilidad sería la transmisión de lo que logramos entender y conocer. Muchas gracias.
He says you guys ask very deep questions. So he also had to give that one some thought, but he says that perhaps, at least from the vision of the Mayav nations, the biggest responsibility that one has when for a person who grows up in these communities and gets, because the oral tradition is passed on from generation to generation, so they learn since childhood so much information. And the grandmothers, the grandfathers, they always say that when a human being acquires a piece of knowledge, understanding, or a level of wisdom, that it can only be wisdom if it is shared. So if I am given knowledge or wisdom, but I keep it to myself and I don't share it with anybody, and I have an understanding, but I just keep it for myself, then it's worthless, because then I'm gonna die one day, and so will that piece of knowledge or that piece of wisdom or that piece of information will die with me. So for the Maya, the most important thing is, or the biggest responsibility that a person from a Mayan community has, is the act of continuing to pass it on, to pass it forward, the knowledge, the wisdom, the information that they have been learning from their own parents, from their own grandparents, from their own experiences as well. And he says it's a very big responsibility, because this tradition is so sacred, it's so ancient, you cannot even change one word from the knowledge that you're sharing with others. And It's about sharing it with those around you. But most importantly, this is what you're going to pass on to the next generation. And so this is what the next generation is going to learn. Like, you've already come to the point in which you deciphered certain things about your life and everything, but there's this new set of people who have not yet. And from scratch, they're going to learn this massive, massive, massive tradition and geocosmovision and all these huge pieces of information. And he says it's a very big responsibility to be the one who teaches it to others, to be the one who teaches it to the next generation. But it's a responsibility that, well, the Maya Nation really believe that that's one of the biggest bases of their tradition, is to continue to share the knowledge and the wisdom. But even though, like, he has that responsibility because of his position and everything, everything that we, all of us, you know, like you too learn, we also in a way have the responsibility to also pass that to the next generations and to be responsible with the information and knowledge that we learn. So that would be his answer to that question.
Awesome, thank you so much. I was going to look at one of our last questions, which is, how can we incorporate Mayan and Indigenous spiritual practices into our daily lives, and where can we find good resources to learn more?
Muchas gracias. Entonces vamos a pasar a la otra pregunta, que es, ¿cómo podemos incorporar las prácticas y espiritualidad maya en nuestra vida diaria? Y en dónde podemos encontrar recursos educativos para aprender más sobre estos temas.
Sí. Si se dieron cuenta, a un principio prendimos una vela. Esa es una tradición muy antigua que practican los pueblos mayas, porque nosotros a través del fuego pues creemos que se logra un vínculo sinérgico entre las esencias de la vida y la vida que somos nosotros. Entonces, en cualquier momento, en cualquier lugar, ustedes pueden retomar estas prácticas, porque no es de uso exclusivo, por decirlo así, en territorio maya. Al contrario, esa pequeña práctica que hicimos es de lo más simple, pero es una forma de entender de que nosotros somos seres multidimensionales. De alguna manera somos afectados por los astros que están allá arriba, las estrellas, los planetas, el Padre Sol. De la misma manera somos influenciados por las energías que emanan de nuestra Sagrada Madre Tierra, ¿verdad? Entonces, en cualquier lugar, en cualquier momento, podemos nosotros retomar ese diálogo con las esencias de la vida. Y las prácticas mayas, lo único que han mostrado, lastimosamente ahora es mal visto porque le dicen que es brujería, le dicen que son cosas del diablo, no sé, un montón de cosas negativas que dicen sobre las tradiciones que se hacen con el sagrado fuego. Yo me encuentro en un lugar de conexión, mal llamado altar maya, sino que para nosotros es un lugar en donde convergen las esencias. Por eso es de que a nosotros cuando nos preguntan si creemos en Dios, decimos que no, porque nosotros no necesitamos creer, nosotros hablamos con las esencias, ¿verdad? Cuando decimos corazón del cielo, corazón de la tierra, corazón del agua, del viento, del fuego, los invocamos. Entonces, este es un lugar en donde vienen las esencias. Por eso quemamos incienso, ¿verdad? Por eso prendemos una vela en símbolo que lo que buscamos es luz, claridad, fuerza, calor. Al final nosotros somos guerreros, pero guerreros espirituales. ¿Y dónde podemos encontrar la información? Pues seamos astutos como fueron los abuelitos y abuelitas. Cuando ellos lograron su conocimiento, su entendimiento, no fueron a una universidad, no fueron a una escuela. Ellos contemplaron la grandeza de la vida, cómo se mueve el viento, cómo se mueve el agua, cómo viven los animales. Ahí está toda la información. Entonces es cuestión de tener un poquito de paciencia y una buena forma de contemplar la vida. La vida para nosotros es un regalo muy grande, en donde no nos podemos dar el lujo de desperdiciar nuestro tiempo. Y el tiempo, lo que genera en nuestra vida, al final es un entendimiento, es una forma de razonar las cosas que nos suceden. Entonces, la situación de ustedes, pues yo me imagino que tienen acceso a bibliotecas, a una biografía muy, muy grande, porque en los países, más que todo en Estados Unidos, pues está el acceso a la información y hay muchos documentos muy buenos, pero la mejor forma de repente como que entender más claro cuáles son nuestras raíces, pues una invitación cordial, vengan a conocer, a ver realmente cómo es el ser maya, el pueblo maya, las costumbres, las tradiciones, el lugar. Y si no se puede, pues desde el lugar donde se encuentren, ustedes pueden entender mucho. Solo tómense su tiempo, vean las cosas como realmente es. A nosotros nos han enseñado a ver solo con estos dos ojos, pero hay necesidad de en algún momento de cerrarlos y ver con la intuición, con el tercer ojo, le decían los abuelos, ¿verdad? Hay necesidad de ver lo que no pueden ver nuestros ojos, pero sí lo siente nuestro corazón. Por eso es de que nosotros, por naturaleza, somos seres espirituales y lo que nosotros hacemos es una práctica espiritual, ¿verdad? Lo que buscamos, por decirlo así, es reconectarnos nuevamente para realmente explorar nuestra grandeza de seres humanos que somos. Fuimos creados para un objetivo, y ese objetivo, el ser humano, la humanidad no lo ha entendido. El objetivo único que tiene la humanidad, por la cual fue creado, es para cuidar toda esta gran, magnífica existencia que es la madre tierra. Entonces, esa sería mi respuesta. Hay formas de cómo encontrar la información, hay documentos, hay biografías. Les recomiendo mucho que busquen a los escritores de acá de Guatemala, porque hay gente que está escribiendo sus memorias, que está transmitiendo sus conocimientos. Hasta ahora que se está dando esa oportunidad, pues también aquí hay mucha biografía muy buena que se puede compartir. Ahí está este enlace, el internet. Es una herramienta que si la sabemos usar, vamos a poder escudriñar nuestra historia, ¿verdad? Muchas gracias.
Okay, so he says that right at the beginning of the chat we have had, we began by taking the time to ask for well, he I don't know if you saw at the beginning, he stepped away for a couple of minutes and he took the time to ask for permission from Mother Earth, from the energies around. He lit a candle. He invited those of you who had one to also light a candle and have that connection. And this, at first sight, perhaps if you're not too familiar with these practices, might seem like something that doesn't make that much sense, or something too simple, something, not too profound. Still, this is something so profound, and the Mayab, like many other incredibly advanced nations, have basically come up with a set of different exercises and things that are not exclusive only to the Maya people, but that everybody in the world can have access to, especially because the elements that we use for them, for those different types of practices, the earth sometimes gives the majority of those elements, and they're truly accessible in many different ways. But he said, for someone who doesn't know so much about the tradition, the simple act of beginning by doing small little things like what he spoke about, which is like opening your eyes and connecting to the earth, lighting a candle, as a small offering in gratefulness for your life, for the earth, for the things, for the essences and the energies that literally enable our existence, because we would not have an existence without those things. To make use of different elements like fire, like incense, like rocks, like many different things that the earth herself provides is very important. But the key is not to use them in an empty way, but to use them to reopen your personal dialogue with the essences that create life, because at the end of the day, that's what, in summary, that's what Maya practices are for people to never forget. Like, as he said at the beginning, you know, if you don't think about this, then you'll walk around the earth without any respect, because you'll forget that she even exists. You will be so immersed in yourself that you will forget. But the Maya, they have this daily practice of having a connection with the essences of life, the ones that create and enable our existence, of being respectful towards them, of saying thank you. And that's not a practice that's exclusive only to Maya people. That's a practice that everybody in the world, no matter where in the world you are, everybody can practice, even with little experience, you know, you can do that, you know. And so there are many specific practices, but he's not going to get into them because it would take a lot of time. But he just wanted to leave you with that one simple act or exercise that we can all do, that is very simple yet very profound. And not be scared of those things, because sometimes, you know, like in our nations, they've seen people lighting candles or lighting a fire, doing different little things like that. And they have called that, I don't know, witchcraft or satanic rituals or whatever. And unfortunately in Guatemala, that does happen quite too often, by the way. In some cases, it is even dangerous for Maya people to do their practices, unfortunately, still even nowadays, because they're seen as, like, you know, evil or whatever. But he said, this is nothing negative, nothing to be afraid of. The simple act of saying thank you to existence, of course, is nothing bad at all. And so even to acknowledge life, for example, right now, where you see him sitting down, this is, well, wrongfully called altar. Mayan altar is really not the proper term. The proper term would be more a table of dialogue. And basically it's a place where the energies or the essences of the energies converge together. When something really wrong about history is that it has been said, if you study it, that the Mayans believe in many gods. This is incorrect. When they ask the Mayans, he says, if we believe in God, the answer actually would be no. They don't have a God, not even one, as a matter of fact. But they do have something that you don't have to believe in, because actually you can see it with your own eyes, so you don't have to believe in it, he says. Because you not only can you see it, but you can have a dialogue with it. What they believe in is the connection to the essences that enable our life and our existence. And that's why they have a dialogue and a conversation with the energies of existence. And that's why they invoke Ukushka, Ukushuleu, which means heart of the sky, heart of the earth. They also invoke the heart of the wind, the heart of the fire, the heart of the water. And just in those few things that you already saw, they invoke much more than that. Those are just a few examples, but all of these things are the things that literally create the symbiosis of life and existence. They're what keep us alive. And they're also much deeper than what we see as well. Even the more you connect with them, the deeper you can see into how alive all of those things are. And so for the Mayans, God would be very different, a very different version to what we hear when we hear the word God, perhaps. But for them, it's the sacredness and symbiosis of all of the existence. And for us, he says, because of that, on that note, we consider ourselves like warriors, but perhaps more than physical fighters, is more like spiritual warriors. And he says that their elders, your ancestors too, your grandfathers, the grandmothers, they taught them from early childhood that the most important thing is to be astute, to be like your ancestors, he says. They did not go to a university or perhaps even a school, but since ancient times, our ancestors, they observed and participated in the greatness of life. They like Biophilia, what he said before, they did not study existence in a book. They learned through practice, science, mathematics, medicine, everything they learned through practice, he says, not in university or not in a school, not the theory of it, but the application of all of this knowledge. And so he says that if you want to learn about these practices, you too should be astute, and you too should do it in the same way that your ancestors did it, which is the first step, you know, is to have this deep observation of life and existence. And it goes back to the essence of who the Maya are, because everything you learn, if you learn it from the perspective of observation and connection with the energies of life and existence and nature and everything, you're going to understand it at a much, not just at a theoretical level of knowledge, but you're going to understand it at a much deeper level. He said, our ancestors, they always told us that if you truly want to learn, you cannot just see with your eyes. Sometimes you have to close your eyes so that you can see with what they call many cultures call it the third eye, and the Mayans too, as a matter of fact. Sometimes you don't, you know, you can't learn just through the mind, just through what you can see with your eyes, but it requires a little bit of closing the eyes so that you can see even deeper than what your eyes can see. And so he says that it is very important to do that and to be patient, because you're not going to be able to, if you've never done that, you're not going to achieve it in 1 second, but you're going to have to. That's why he was recommending this recurring practice that he recommended right at the beginning. And but of course, at the same time, he says that, especially for you guys, it's a little easier. Unfortunately, that's also true, that it's a little easier, because maybe a lot of you live in other countries, maybe a lot of you guys live in the US even. And actually, I just was traveling and they asked me to bring them back a lot of books, because it's harder to access their books in Guatemala than in other countries, as a matter of fact. So he says you have libraries. There is a huge list of Guatemalan and like Mayan writers who wrote the history, who wrote still be astute, because a lot of the history, as I said, can be wrong, you know, but do a little research of where you can find the authentic history, and you can actually go and search and read about that history. There are many books, many things that you can discover. He says that, well, the best way to go, of course, is go back to your umbilical cord, as he said before. And for those of you who do have the opportunity to travel to Guatemala, that would be really cool, so that you can see it in person, because there's a big difference between being there and experiencing live the traditions, the spiritual practices, to talk in person and sit with people who that like Aj Kakaw, Mayan spiritual leaders, Aj Kakaw, guardians of the wisdom of cacao. There's midwives, there's herbalists, there's like so many teachers of the Maya tradition who, if you talk to them in person, of course, we can like learn more. But if you don't have those possibilities, luckily we have the internet today, which allowed us to be here, and you learn through the internet already. And there, of course, are many resources online as well that you can search for. I will try to mention some when we close up. But the most important thing is, he says, to sometimes knowledge, you have to use your brain, but not only that, sometimes you have to close your eyes and use your heart so that you can truly turn that knowledge into wisdom. And to finish off the answer to this question, he says that since they're very, very little, they are taught that human beings and Maya beings have only one goal in life. Not one goal, but the biggest priority of one's life, the biggest, most important thing in life is to have what they call a useful existence. And humanity has totally forgotten about what our purpose in life is as like a society, as a community, as individuals, and is that truly we are the protectors and care. We're supposed to, like all the beings, they participate in a symbiosis, and we're supposed to participate in it too, to be protectors and people who guard and respect Mother Earth and the things that happen in her. And that has to be the #1 priority of all of us. So I hope that answers the question.
I think that answers so many questions. I know that really spoke to a lot of the questions that were asked by the community. I know that really spoke to me on a personal level as well. So I wanted to say thank you on behalf of all of us for those beautiful answers. So to close out, I wanted to mention that to learn more about specific practices, we encourage you to check out the classes and free offerings by the Mayan Wisdom Project. You can find them on their website, Instagram, Facebook as the Mayan Wisdom Project. We'll provide links in the live chat as well. If you're a Guatemalan adoptee, we'd like to invite you to visit us on social media at Next Gen Guate. We have a group for friends and family of adoptees, as well as a group for just adoptees. We'll be launching our culture pod soon. The pod series this year will be focusing on culture, searching and reuniting bio families, and mental health as well. These will be focused month-long discussions and events on the most requested topics by the NGG community. Feel free to reach out to us via social media, connect with NGG via our groups. Thank you so much for bringing us all these beautiful questions and for participating. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for inviting us, and Gemma as well, but all of the Next Generation Guate team. It has been, for us, I think, a very, very special opportunity to come here and speak directly with you guys, and I hope it's the first of many times that we will do so. So yeah, just to share a little bit more about where you can find us. We are the Mayan Wisdom Project. You can go to our website, which is just mayanwisdomproject.com. And we try to provide education on Maya topics in a few different ways. We have a lot of free offerings. As Rebecca mentioned, we have free events monthly. For example, actually, in a few days, in like a week, we have our next monthly Kotzij, which is a place where you can come to learn what people wrongfully nowadays call a ceremony, but you can learn the traditional and a practice of a Maya ceremony. It's also guided by Tata Jerico, by the way. So you will see him again if you do decide to come. And of course, we share so much, but I mean, like, if you're looking to like resources for learning, we just share so much information and so many different topics on our social media. So if you just follow us on Instagram, we also have a YouTube channel where we try to upload videos where the teachers themselves are the ones who explain different topics of the Maya Geocosmovision. So that's some of our free resources. But we also have a few different resources as well for those of you who are interested. We offer private sessions with Mayan spiritual leaders and teachers, including Tata Jerico, but he's not the only teacher. We work with many teachers of the different Mayan nations in Guatemala. We also have the Mayan Wisdom Academy, which is a membership where you can access many video courses that cover many different topics. We have the Mayan Wisdom Community, which is a community that functions like a social network for Mayan Wisdom enthusiasts, where you can learn deeply about topics such as midwifery, womb healing, cacao, herbalism, stones and crystals, the wrongfully called calendars, but actually measurements of the cycles of life. You can also learn about your own Maya energy and connect with other people who have the same energy and have like a deep analysis of your energy, as well as access monthly webinars by spiritual leaders and indigenous teachers of the Maya nations. We have a shop where we support currently over 20 indigenous owned businesses who produce things from ceremonial cacao to cacao drinking cups to candles to a lot of different things. We also have a cacao training program that's more specific for the people who are interested in learning about cacao directly. The next one is actually coming up soon. And we also have the 20-day cacao challenge. And just so you guys know, that one is actually coming up super soon. The last date for signing up is in a few days, basically. We only have a few days left to start. And it's just a 20-day challenge where we meet every day, drink cacao, learn about its uses, histories, ancient recipes, and we learn about the 20 energies of the Cholquij calendar, which is the most renowned and like sacred calendar that the Mayans use. So for 20 days, we learn about the 20 energies while we drink cacao together live. And we send you the cacao and everything. It's made by Tata Jerico's wife, the cacao. So, so that's also cool. It's made actually right there where he's sitting, like a few meters away from where he's sitting right now. So that's also cool. So if you're interested, because I said a lot of things, so you guys probably won't remember them all, you can find out and actually learn about those things more slowly in our website, which, as I said, is mayanwisdomproject.com. But also, we're always available, so shoot us a message, send us an email, and we will answer any questions you guys may have. I think we'll just give the word back to Tata Jerico to see if he has a few last things to say, right, before we say goodbye. Le damos nuevamente la palabra para ya despedirnos. Si le parece, eso es lo que tiene apagado su micrófono para que lo prenda.
Ahí estamos. ¿Me escucha?
Sí, ahora sí lo escuchamos.
Bueno, pues Shahunima Maltioshinik, Sipahin Cheleka Lajajau, Rumal, Shusipach Chake Wow Hunkak Ehri, Uko Chirikle Uchokable, Washakipsi, Chewawe Ehri, Lenuanima, Kakikotik, Rumal, Shinchau Ukla, Tatnan, Las Aljuera, Sahala, Speala, Wuri, Chiri, Koile, La Wochochla, Shahunima, Las Maltiosniki, Sipahin Cheleka Lajajau, Cheleka Ukushka, Ukushule. Bueno, pues la verdad, muchísimas gracias por su tiempo, por su atención. Me siento muy contento de que en este día, 8 perros, así lo marca el sagrado calendario, se dio la oportunidad de platicarles a ustedes un poquito sobre sus raíces originales, de dónde provienen, y es un motivo también de invitación para que vengan a conocer sus raíces. Es una invitación muy especial para todos ustedes, hermanos, hermanas guatemaltecos que se fueron por X o Y razón. Aquí está su tierra, aquí está su casa. Cuando puedan venir, serán bienvenidos. No me queda nada más que agradecerles. Mi corazón explota de alegría porque tuve la oportunidad de dirigirme a ustedes, hermanos y hermanas guatemaltecas. Agradezco al esfuerzo que hace el Mayan Wisdom Project de crear estos vínculos que son muy necesarios hoy día. Agradezco el trabajo a Rebeca, por primera vez que la conozco. Mucho gusto a todos ustedes. Pues desde acá un saludo muy cordial del pueblo maya quiché, Tzotzil y Tzutujil en el territorio de Sololá. Esperemos que no sea la primera ni la última vez que podamos compartir un poquito. Un saludo de los abuelos mayas quichés desde Sololá, y se cuidan bastante por donde están, y muchas gracias por su atención, muy amables. Maltiosh.
Mateos. So he says that he is extremely happy to have been able to have the opportunity to participate in this event. For him, this was truly special because there is nothing that makes him happier than to be able to direct himself to Guatemalan brothers and sisters. And even though maybe you went far away, this is your land and you'll be very welcome whenever you come back or decide to visit. So he says on this date that is 8C or 8 dog, which would be the energy of this day according to one of the Mayan calendars, which is called the Cholquij calendar. So today we're carried by 8C, just for context. So on this day that is 8C, it is a pleasure, he says, to receive you in his home, which is in Sololá, of the Quiché, the Tzotzil, and the Tzutujil nations, and a truly warm greeting to all of you from the Quiché nation, which is his nation. and that truly his heart is exciting from being able to direct himself to all of you guys, and that he really hopes to see all of you, and that this is not the last time we meet. Thank you to the Mayan Wisdom Project for always creating the link for all sorts of events like this ones. And thank you so much, he says, to Rebecca and Next Generation Guatemala for organizing this. He's meeting Rebecca and everybody for the first time today. And he says it's been a great pleasure to meet you guys. And thank you for organizing this. And we hope to see you all very soon as well.
Thank you. And from Next Generation Guatemala, we want to extend our thank you so much to Tata Jerico for sharing his time, his wisdom, and really his heart with us. I know from the chat, it really resonated with so many of us. I know for me personally as well. Thank you again, Solveig, for translating, and for Gemma for doing all the tech work in the background. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the energy that we all put into this. All right, thank you, guys.